Zoom.
Mr. President, this
Senator
sponsor would like to
Angara.
manifest.
Mr. President, the information being asked by the distinguished gentleman is very critical and important. So, with his indulgence, we would like to commit to him that we will submit a complete, true, and faithful income statement, and would ask that his not interrogation, his interpellation may not be terminated.
That is fine with me, Mr. President, as long as distinguished sponsor do not assign me again to defend the NAPOCOR's budget this year. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you,
Very
Senator
much.
Sangara and Arroyo.
And
Thank
there
you,
is
Mr.
no more reservation for interpellation, Mr. President. So, if I may join
Yes, Mr.
the
President.
majority leader to move to close the period of interpellation.
There is
Thank
a
you, Mr.
motion by Senator Angara to close the period of interpellation. Is there an objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
There is no committee amendment, Mr. President. So,
May I
again,
ask for 1 minute suspension, Mr. President?
With the permission of the body, session suspended.
meron ka bang committee?
Session
To
is
reiterate, Mr. President, there is no committee amendment, and I move to close the committee amendment.
Mr. President, with all due respect to my mentor, Mr. President, that's my job to close the period of amendments. Mr. President, I move to close the period of amendments.
I'm trying to inspire you to action.
Yes, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? The motion of the majority leader, seconded by Senator Angara.
Mr. President,
Senator Arroyo.
I'm just, this bill was introduced by the majority leader, no? That's why he keeps on walking back and forth. And he's more tense than any one of us here. But I want to put on record the petitory portion of it. No? It says, resolved as it is hereby resolved by the Senate and the House of Representatives that the congressional approval requested by the National Power Corporation to implement the 10% salary adjustment approved by the Office of the President be granted. Now, it doesn't seem right. The President approves the 10% salary increase. And then we are the one supposed to approve it. Why is it like that? If the President wants to give its 10% salary increase, then let her do it under her account, under her responsibility. But for us to, how is this? Was this an executive order or what?
Executive order, Mr. President.
Executive order. It says, I give 10% salary increase, then subject to approval of the of Congress.
Yes. Mr. President, we appreciate and we note with gratitude the point raised by this distinguished gentleman.
Well,
But we have amended that, Mr. President, when submitting the committee report, so that the resolutory portion of this resolution has been changed from what he has read to the following: resolved as it is hereby resolved by the Senate and the House of Representatives that the congressional approval required before the National Power Corporation can implement the 10% salary increase adjustment in accordance with the approved salary schedule for officers and employees of the Transcorp, PISAM, and NPC be granted, provided that the source of fund for the salary increase adjustment in fiscal year 2008 shall come from savings in personnel services of the same year in compliance with the special provision number 1 of the NPC budget to Congress and to the Department of Budget and Management, its existing compensation and position classification system, including the status of its implementation.
it is so detailed, and we are supposed to give a concurrence. And but Mr. President, the reason why I suppose all of us here are tend to be liberal in acting on this because it is a salary increase, and because of the hard times and all that. But at the same time, we have also to harmonize the fact that there should be some performance. What do you call that? Yeah, some performance to justify it. But thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. We will note that that comment about salary increase matching performance or performance matching salary increase.
Mr. President.
Minority Leader.
Yes, may I be recognized? Again, like Senator Arroyo, I am not about to block the approval of this joint resolution. But I would certainly like to have the privilege of getting clarifications regarding the matter. The first clarification that I want to find out is why is this being done by a joint resolution? What is the reason for that, Mr. President?
The main reason for that, Mr. President, is that the route to take through joint resolution is probably faster than the ordinary bill route. And we decided that the joint resolution mode is the better option because it will be faster. It is a simple statement of concurrence outside the premises, the whereases, Mr. President. So
Yes, I can understand that. But if we go via that route, will we follow the same thing regarding the increases of other employees?
that's what we did in the salary standardization 3, Mr. President.
By resolution?
By resolution, I sponsored it, Mr. President. It was approved by the House. It was approved by the Senate.
Would the increases that we talk about involve the ordinary employees of government, Mr. President?
This one or the
No,
salary
the previous ones that you talked about.
The previous one, Mr. President, as you will remember, is being implemented in 2 tranches. The first tranche, 1/2, was granted in July.
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
And the balance will be granted in January. And that's quite substantial because it's across the board.
And just for the record, that was also done via a joint resolution.
That's correct, Mr.
Yes. So I want that on record so that nobody can accuse the Senate of being, biased, you might say, in favor of NAPOCOR officials for purposes of increasing their salaries. Now, Mr. President, what are the guidelines? Are there any guidelines to ensure that the increases that we are about to approve would be fair, especially as regards the rank and file of these government corporations, Mr. President?
Mr. President, this salary increase is an across-the-board increase, and therefore, unlike a merit or performance increase, it's not individually specific, but it's granted to one and all, 10%, whether you are a janitor or the president of the corporation.
Now, it looks like, Mr. President, that the 10% salary increase had already been implemented by Transco and PISAM.
That's
And-
correct, Mr. President.
On what basis did Transco and PISAM implement the salary increase?
Because the salary increase was granted to all government employees, including government-owned agencies, attached agencies. And in the case of PISAM and Transco, there is no specific requirement for congressional permission.
But there is a requirement for NPC. Is that what Your
That's
Honor is
correct,
saying?
That's correct, Mr. President.
All right. Of course, subject to the request of Senator Arroyo regarding the data that he was asking,
We will supply that.
I would also terminate my interpellation, Your Honor, because as I said, I have no wish to delay the approval of this resolution. On the assumption that we are doing the same thing for all the members of our bureaucracy, Mr. President, as we had done in the past, apparently.
Yes.
So thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
You're
There is a
welcome, Mr.
pending motion by the Majority Leader to close the period of amendments. Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading Senate Joint Resolution number 25. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend consideration Senate Joint Resolution number 25.
An objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Ask for 1 minute suspension.
Session suspended. Session is resumed.
Before we move on to sponsorship of certain measures, through the communication given to me by Senator Edgardo Angara, I'd like to manifest that Senator Richard Gordon is designated as the Vice Chair or elected as Vice Chair of the Committee on Finance. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection?
Congratulations for the more work.
Did Senator Gordon accept it? All right. Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we have here presence of the gallery, general managers, officers, and members of local water districts from the province of Cavite, Laguna, Batangas, and Cotabato, led by Philippine Association of Water Districts, President Delphine Hilario, Mr. President.
May we request our visitors to rise to be recognized?
They're over there.
Okay, welcome
Thank
to the
you.
Senate.
Mr. President, I move to transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to special order Senate Bill number 3396 under Committee Report number 552 and ask Secretary to read the title of the measure.
Secretary, please proceed.
An act amending Republic Act number 9280, otherwise known as the Customs Brokers Act of 2004 and for other purposes.
Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 3396 under Committee Report number 552. Recognize the distinguished sponsor, Senator Ping Lacson, to deliver his sponsorship speech.
Senator Lacson is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is my honor and privilege to sponsor before this august chamber Senate Bill number 3396 under Committee Report number 552, entitled An Act Amending Republic Act number 9280, otherwise known as the Customs Brokers Act of 2004, and for other purposes. International trade and commerce are vital to economic development in an increasingly globalized environment. In the current fast-paced business arena, restrictive statutory controls can be disadvantageous and will result in significantly costly lags. Our government should therefore respond by enacting appropriate laws that will enhance commerce instead of creating roadblocks and bottlenecks to progress. That is, the flow of goods should be facilitated rather than hampered as much as possible. Pursuant to the policy of the state of giving priority attention and support to the professionalization of the practice of the customs brokers profession, Congress in 2004 enacted Republic Act 9280, otherwise known as the Customs Brokers Act of 2004. Said law serves to uplift the profession by providing a climate conducive to the practice that will maximize their capability and potential. However, since its enactment, numerous stakeholders in the import and export sectors have raised objections and apprehensions with certain provisions of RA number 9280 that they believe impede rather than facilitate the smooth and rapid flow of commerce into the country. Chief of these concerns are the prohibition against a corporation engaging in the business of customs brokerage and the requirement that import and export entry declarations should only be signed by a customs broker. This bill, therefore, seeks to address this problem by providing a reasonable rule on the aforementioned matter. Under the proposed bill, the committee clarifies that import entry has to be signed not only by the customs broker but also by the importer, consignee, or owner. This amendment will establish in very clear terms the responsibility and liability of the importer and at the same time avoid the possibility of customs brokers releasing shipments without the foreknowledge or consent of the importers. With regard to export declarations, laws and previous rules and regulations allow exporters to process their export shipments with minimal need for customs brokers, since the former are allowed to process and sign their documents. However, when Republic Act 9280 was enacted, Section 27 of the said law specifically states that only a customs broker should sign the export entry declaration. The Export Development Council and PhilExport vigorously supported the move to amend Section 27 of Republic Act number 9280, arguing that the deletion of the word exports will remove the ambiguity vis-a-vis the last phrase of the section, which states, and I quote, based on the covering documents submitted by the importers, unquote. The imposition of the customs broker's signature goes against the policy of the government of eliminating fees, reducing transaction charges, and eliminating layer of signatures to help exporters, especially during economic downturns. The services of customs brokers are not necessary in the filing and processing of export documents because exports do not require classification of goods and computation of taxes. Customs brokers are trained to classify and compute tax on imports, not on exports. Export document contains only basic facts and information about the export goods, the exporter, the buyer, the carrier, and other basic transactional information for recording and monitoring purposes. The exporter themselves or himself can best represent and vouch for the authenticity of the information found in an export declaration compared to the broker. Further, Section 27 is contrary to international trade practice, where traders may or may not hire the services of customs brokers. The said practice is in recognition that some traders have the technical capabilities to deal and comply with the customs requirements of their governments without the help of a third party. The most controversial provision of Republic Act 9280 is Section 29, which prohibits any firm, company, association from being registered or licensed as such for the practice of customs brokers profession. Section 29 was understood as a prohibition against companies or firms from employing brokers and thereby crippling their business in the process. The simplicity and speed of bringing goods from the port of origin to the port of destination using the technologies afforded by logistics and multimodalism, where transport, customs clearance, and delivery are handled by one single transport operator in a single transport chain under a one-stop shop arrangement, is the type of system desired by the business community. Unfortunately, unless the present law is amended, total logistics services by a single provider will be impossible, as a single individual customs broker operating by himself would have to be inserted in the transport chain. Thus, trade facilitation will be replaced by a time-consuming process accompanied by the attendant increase in costs caused by a segmented transport and delivery system. Moreover, big companies are uneasy about entrusting their customs clearance requirements to a single customs broker. They argue that single brokers cannot comply with the bonding, security, financial, and transport requirements of larger companies. It should be noted that before the passage of Republic Act 9280, Section 3401 of the Tariff and Customs Code provides that, quote, no corporations, associations, or partnerships shall engage in customs brokerage business unless at least two of the members of such corporation or association, or at least two of the members of such partnership have such a certificate, unquote. Under the proposal, your committee proposes to amend Section 29 of the present law to read as follows. Admission to professional practice. The practice of customs broker is a professional service, admission to which shall be determined upon the basis of individual and personal qualifications. However, nothing in this act shall prevent a corporation from being registered for the purpose of engaging in the business of customs brokerage as long as they engage or hire the services of at least one customs broker. For purposes of this act, the phrase engaging in the business of customs brokerage shall mean making representation on behalf of the importer clients in the Bureau of Customs and other government agencies, provided that such corporations engage in the business of brokering shall have a minimum paid-up capital of 1 million pesos before they are accredited by the Bureau of Customs. However, despite the wordings of the proposed amendment, it should not be construed as allowing corporations the right to engage in the profession of customs brokerage. It is submitted that while only individual and natural persons can be legally licensed by the government regulatory agency for the purpose of regulating a profession, corporations must not be barred from extending brokerage services to traders as long as this is done by them through licensed customs brokers who are connected with the corporation concerned. The amendment will preserve the sanctity and exclusivity of the profession to duly licensed customs brokers and, at the same time, clarify that corporations or firms may engage the services of a customs broker in the pursuit of its customs brokerage business. In light of the foregoing, it is hoped that this committee it is the hope of this committee that the proposed amendment will balance the seemingly stringent features of the law that prevents, if not hampers, the free flow of trade into our country without, however, sacrificing the objectivity and reliability of our customs brokers and the important role they play in the entire process. Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon.
Thank you, Senator Lacson. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. To allow our colleagues to study the measure further, I move to suspend consideration Senate Bill number 3396. I so move,
Is
Mr.
there an objection? There being none, motions approved.
Mr. President, I move to transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to special order Senate Bill number 2546 under Committee Report number 93 and request the Secretary to read the title of the measure.
Secretary, please read the title of the measure.
An act creating the Department of Information and Communications Technology, defining its powers and functions, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes.
Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 2546 and recognize the sponsor, the principal sponsor, the distinguished senator from Aurora, Senator Angara, Mr. President.
The senator from the gentleman from Aurora is recognized.
Yung kanila. Our colleagues from that side of the gallery.
Mr. President, it's with great pleasure to introduce and ask the support of the body to Senate Bill number 2546, an act creating the Department of Information and Communications Technology, defining its powers and functions, appropriating funds therefore, and for other purposes. Mr. President, this initiative belongs to Senators Loren Legarda, the presiding officer Jingoy Estrada, and Antonio Trillanes IV. Mr. President, we are hoping that with the creation of this department, we are going to bring the entire country into the future. Well, into the present as well as into the future. The Commission on Information and Communications Technology, or CICT, the current body in charge of information and communication technology, is a creation of Executive Order number 269 by President Gloria Macapagal signed on 12 January 2004. But this executive order, Mr. President, is purely a transitory measure because it is expected that the creation of a regular Department of Information and Communication will soon follow because it is not only a priority of government, but it is also a move as well as an initiative demanded by the times. As a transitory measure, Mr. President, the formation of the CICT, of CICT may be able to address the urgent need to harmonize and make the country's approach to ICT development more coherent and efficient. Mr. President, the growth of the BPOs, or the business processing outsourcing sector, is phenomenal, to say the least, Mr. President. In a span of less than a decade, the Philippines has become the third biggest BPO center of the world, the first being India, Canada, and the Philippines, and the rest are divided among several countries. But unless we move faster and respond to the call of the times, Mr. President, even that preeminence that we occupy may be lost, as we have lost so many preeminent positions in the past. The growth of the business, Mr. President, of the business processing outsourcing, and our country's mobile subscriber base are two indicators of one simple truth. Technology and information-based industries already define and will define future economies. At this point where the entire world faces an economic crisis, few of us have experienced in our lives the significance of these industries is not just a matter of dependence, but also economic survival. Consider this, Mr. President. Should indeed the worst of the worst come about and our traditional hope for relief, the vast OFW market will collapse completely due to the crisis. We have a measure of hope because we have nurtured our BPO sector. This sector is our bulwark. Mr. President, as we know, export and import have collapsed terribly in the past 18 months. But what is shoring up our economy in terms of foreign exchange is our repatriation from our OFWs, as well as the payments we get for the operation of BPOs. But even at the level of operation we have, Mr. President, we're merely scratching the surface. We ought to leverage our technological advances and our language proficiency, Mr. President, for the benefit of the Filipino people. And in order to evolve from this, we need a dedicated government agency that will oversee the development and make it a leader in the age of information. The Philippines, Mr. President, can become a global ICT leader and be globally competitive with other countries, and as a result, uplift the standards of living of many Filipinos. And I say this, Mr. President, not as a matter of boasting, but as a matter of fact, because the facts do not lie. ICT enables economic growth and opportunity. It allows other mission-critical sectors such as health and education to achieve their development targets. We recognize it in the medium-term Philippine Development Plan of 2004 to 2010. ICT, Mr. President, just to put it more simply, ICT enables government, communities, and individuals to better their lot. That's, in sum, what we will gain from ICT. What is the current status of CICT? Well, as we said, Mr. President, it's very precarious because it's temporary, it's an interim organization, and therefore we need, and it can be changed any day, Mr. President, by another executive order.